everyone. My guest today is Emily Sander. And Emily Sander has been in the business world for 15 years. She's got a ton of accomplishments. She was part of the testing team for the first Kindle device. She's been part of a 6-person startup team. She's built a global client management team from scratch. And she's a coach who works with business leaders all around the world of all types, all seasoned executives, entrepreneurs, first-time managers. She's also the author of Hacking Executive Leadership, and we're going to get into that, hopefully. It's a book that distills her combined insights into a short, easy-to-read book. And Emily, we always start with one question, and I love that this is a question you already asked your coaching clients, so you're familiar with it. So I'll actually ask the question the way you ask it, which is, who has been an influential person in your life and how did they impact you?
One of the biggest mentors I had, or most impactful mentors I had, actually was very early in my career. And I was very, very lucky to collaborate with him. And he was my manager. And I remember sitting in his office and he said, "Emily, you know, you could run a department one day." And at that time, that was the furthest thing from my thought process, from what I thought was possible. You might as well have said, "Emily, you're gonna, fly to Mars one day."
Right.
And I did like the double take around my shoulders, like, "Are you talking to me?" And he planted that seed and he cultivated it over time. And he really spoke, into the vision and my potential. And at that time, I was a lead. So I was kind of one step above entry level. I was doing good at my job. I worked hard. I was good with clients. I had demonstrated fledgling leadership skills, and he just took that potential and ran with it. But I remember distinctly, his face, that office, that moment, and it really sparked something and ignited something in me that I didn't see myself. And of course, over many series of circumstances and over years, that developed into me leading teams and managing departments and becoming an executive. And now I currently serve on the C-suite. But that was just that little kind of flick and change in trajectory that changed my career and my life and my thought process about myself. So that always stands out as an impactful mentor.
I love that story. Thank you for sharing. And, we're all about interdependence here, kind of how we help each other succeed. And we often don't think about those stories. We kind of move on with our life and we don't think about those stories of those people who impacted us, because when we focus on them, we can then focus on how we can be that for another person. So excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So let's jump in. I love this idea of the swizzle method. And I won't even try to do it justice. You go ahead and tell us all about it. And then I've got some follow-up questions after that.
Yes. So swizzle is a word I made up, and I was going fast and talking to my team one day, and I said, "Let's just swizzle the PowerPoint decks." And in context, that meant we have a PowerPoint presentation coming up we're going to have to do. We have 3 previous decks that we've used. I wanted them to pull the best and most relevant information from the previous 3, make a brand new deck, and something we could use. So swizzle, that's how it was born. And it's a way to be resourceful, and it's a way to creatively problem solve. And so you can use the framework of swizzle with tangible, kind of practical, tactical things like a PowerPoint. And you can also expand that theme into something larger. So an example I give is, I was listening to a podcast with Floyd Mayweather, and he is a champion boxer. I'm not into boxing. You don't want to see me box or talk about boxing, but I like listening to interviews with people. And the interviewer was trying to get him to talk about, like, why are you the best? Like, what makes you the champion? Is it your training? Is it your diet? Is it, your fitness? And he finally says, "It's my adaptability. And it's my ability to adapt to any opponent, any round, and any punch. And I do that better than anyone else. And that's why I'm the champion." And me listening, I was like, ding, light bulb goes off. I'm not a boxer, but I can apply that principle and that theme of adaptability to my world, which is business, which is coaching. Am I adapting the best I can to different scenarios, situational leadership? Am I adapting to my interactions with people? Am I communicating in a way that's going to land best for them? and make my
Yeah.
message as effective for them. And so that's another example of swizzling. So it's lifting and shifting the relevant and best parts of what I heard on that podcast and applying it in a way that's helpful in my world.
I love that. And is adaptability, is it a critical skill? I mean, it's sort of a loaded question, but adaptability is a critical skill. Why so? Like how do you help your clients with adaptability, and why is it such a critical skill right now?
Absolutely. I mean, I think even before the last couple of years with global
Yeah.
pandemic and everything, adaptability is huge in leadership. And it was just more pronounced and accentuated with the last 24 months, where people had to adapt very quickly and in very big ways to market changes and regulations and downsizing and decisions about different departments. And so I think I saw a lot of leaders struggle with the resistance to change and like, oh, I don't like this, so I'm going to fight it. And then it almost double stacks them against themselves, meaning you have this event, which is unexpected, and that is what it is in and of itself. And then if you double stack a layer of stress and resistance and trying to make this not be the case, it almost, it's a double whammy. And so people who could adapt quickly and
Yeah.
adapt effectively and get themselves calmed down and in a good place to lead, and then help their teams and help their companies adapt well. Really, I could see a stark difference between people's reactions and their adaptability to COVID and the ramifications from that. But even without COVID, I think, you have things come up at a weekly, daily level where it's like, oh, I didn't see that coming, or, oh, I'm going to have to adapt my approach to this team meeting. This went in a different direction than I thought it would. And being able to respond to change and say, this is neutral. Change in and of itself is neutral. We often slap a negative label on it.
Right.
But let me see the opportunity. Let me adapt with aplomb, and let me adapt with ease and take this in my stride. And if you just work on that skill, adapting and your response to change is a skill you can build up like anything else. It will serve you well in leadership, in life, in everything.
Yeah, I love that. There's so much out there in terms of mindset to move you toward being able to adapt. Growth by Carol Dweck, Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I think I'm pronouncing that
Nice.
right. So there's lots of knowledge out there, and yet people still get tripped up on that adaptability. They get tripped up on the change. They get to that, they get confronted with the change. They don't want to make the change. What makes the difference, and what makes people be able to change?
One of the biggest things is having confidence you can figure it out.
Right.
A lot of people, I mean, the human brain just doesn't like uncertainty. It's a natural, intuitive thing. Like when something's uncertain, do you feel comfortable or do you feel uncomfortable?
Sure.
So people get that. And there's been studies where the human brain just likes to be certain. And so if there's uncertainty, it'll make up a story. It'll try to help you and predict an outcome. And sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you don't know what's going to happen. And so that can be really unsettling. I work with my clients on saying, you can handle it and you can figure it out. And the reason I know that is because you're here today. And so you have handled and you have figured out a whole bunch of previous scenarios and situations that were unexpected. And sometimes it's a matter of going back and listing them and say, Will, think of a time when you didn't know how something was going to turn out and you were really worried about it. Did that resolve itself somehow? And of course, the answer is yes. And did you have to figure something out that you didn't think you could or you didn't know about before? And of course, the answer is yes. And so kind of leapfrogging over to no matter what happens, no matter what transpires or unfolds, I will be able to figure it out. I'll be able to handle it. When the time comes, when I actually have to take action and make a decision, I can do that. And so that is often helpful. I'm like, okay, like, yes, like no matter what happens, and I don't have to try to figure it out or have to pinpoint the exact answer. I'll get closer, I'll take guidance, I'll look at the information, I'll make the best decision I can, but in the end, I can figure it out. And I have confidence in myself to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And in many ways, your clients get to borrow that from you for the time. I'm wondering how you equip your clients to self-coach themselves. Like, how do they become? So right now I'm meeting with my coach, Emily, and she said, yeah, I have the confidence to do this. And so now I do for at least the next I don't know, a couple hours, however long it takes me to tackle that task. How do you self-coach? How do you coach your clients to self-coach to move beyond just working with you and then begin to really internalize that mindset?
Absolutely. The self-awareness is the first step for anything. So being aware of something is the first step to changing anything. And oftentimes it takes a lot of foundation work. I'm talking weeks, possibly months, for someone to be able to catch themselves, so to speak.
Mhm.
Catch yourself when your thoughts are going in a certain direction. Catch yourself when you're like, oh, I'm over worrying, or I'm being self-critical, or I have gone past the point of thinking about something to its usefulness.
Yeah.
So if something unexpected happens and it's uncertain, it makes sense to think about it to a certain extent. Let me think about, the possible scenarios and like maybe what I'm going to do here and there. And that's all well and fine. That's a prudent thing to do. You're being organized. There comes a point where any thought past that is you're just jumping on the hamster wheel and you just like spinning your wheels for no reason and over worrying and over stressing. And it literally does you no good. There's no helpfulness beyond that. And so being aware of, hey, I've hit that threshold, or hey, I've, kind of thought through it to the point where I want to think through it. And I'm catching myself going in another direction. So just that in and of itself is really helpful. And a lot of people, again, we talked about resistance and friction before. They'll say like, oh, like I have to stop this right now. And the first step is just being aware of it
Right.
with placing no judgment on it and saying, okay, my brain might want to go in that direction, and let me just see it for what it is and be aware of that. And just that simple distance and creating that space is really helpful. And then the next phase is, okay, is that thought serving me well?
Right.
No, because it's doing no good. Okay, so let me get to neutral. And that's the second step. And then the next step along that path would be, let me replace it with something more useful. So it could just be like, hey, no matter what happens, I can handle it, or whatever replacement thought or baby thought you want to put in there. And then you just go through that process again. Let me be aware, I'm noticing it. Let me go to neutral. Let me replace it. And you do that over and over and over again. And then eventually, the new thought you have, the one that's helping you and serving you better, will become your default.
Becomes the default, becomes the dominant thought. I love that. I love that. It's a process of re-scripting.
Yes, exactly.
But it's a habit too, which I love. And so that was actually going to be my next question. So mindfulness is or what you're advocating is a mindset, but I'm wondering like what kinds of habits do you coach your clients toward to really help build that mindset, to help them build resilience, the ability to conquer change? Like what habits do you help your folks focus on?
It is a habit, and that's an important point. So just people think, oh, let me do that 3 or 4 times and I'll be good. No, you got to build that new habit. So I think that's important to throw out there as well. Well worth it. It does take work and time. Well worth it.
Yeah.
So habits. So it depends on kind of the client I'm working with in the situation, of course. But a few things I can share are, we often go through our days very busy, right? A lot of us are on a frenetic pace and we're hectic and we're in meetings and we're on calls and we're picking up kids and all the rest. And so sometimes it's building in habits to existing habits you have. So habit stacking. So an easy one is, most people hopefully brush their teeth twice a day, or at least once a day. And so you just kind of do that automatically on autopilot. And by the way, that is a habit that you have. And so you can stack another where it's like, okay, while I'm brushing my teeth, I'm going to say, 3 encouraging words to myself, or I'm just going to kind of say, let me set the tone and tenor for my day in the direction I want. And that's kind of an easy one. If I have clients who, when they go through a certain doorway, they say something to themselves like, hey, I'm going into this conference room, this meeting room. I want to show up in a certain way as the leader of that meeting. So I'm going to remember to be, confident, listen actively, and be encouraging to my team. Like those are the 3 thoughts that I'm going to say every time I go in this door. And so there's just little tiny things you can do that might not take a whole bunch of time, because business professionals are very busy, or take a lot of, I have to buy this thing and, get this mat and go meditate for 90 minutes type of thing. But just little tiny habits, incremental changes and incremental improvements that will add up over time. Believe me, the the compounding effect and the dividends that you can reap from these small incremental micro habits or stacked habits can serve you very well.
I love that. I want to go back to just the basic idea of swizzling, because swizzling is probably kind of a habit as well, like, being in the habit of seeing what worked in the past and what can I kind of bring and remix together. I'm just curious, like, what do you see as some of the really great outcomes of that following through on that swizzling method?
Sure. So one of the biggest is you can tap into different areas of your life. A lot of people kind of silo, here's like the work area of my life, here's the personal area of my life, maybe here's my hobby. And they kind of are tunnel vision and keep those in distinct spots. And really, you can and should lift and shift different principles and apply them in different areas. A quick example of this is I go to the gym and work out. And there's this methodology whereby instead of going to failure, so if you're weightlifting and you're like trying to max out and going to failure, you actually want to stop a little bit shy of that. So you don't want to go full out 110%, which is, nice on YouTube videos or Instagram or whatever.
Right.
But if you actually want to be most productive and effective over time, you want to stop a little bit before that. And the reason is you'll actually be more effective the next day that you try to work out. So your muscles will be able to recover and you'll be able to do more effective workouts for longer. Take that principle and shift it to business. Well, if you're working late and you're burning the candle at both ends, you can go to failure, so to speak, sometimes, but it's better for you to stop a little bit earlier. So, hey, if I'm working late and my brain is dead and I'm past the point of diminishing returns, where anything I do after this is just going to be a waste of time and not high quality work, it's better for me to stop, leave a little bit before my brain completely dies, and then come back tomorrow and have a more effective work session or more effective workout in the gym example. So that's something where you can just use it from different areas of life. And I think it also, for me, it is a built-in habit, and I'm actively looking for things. I'm actively looking for principles and themes and frameworks and tips and tricks and things people say. Billboards, advertising, anything is just like all this open field and just this opportunity of, oh, how can I make myself better? And so when you're actively looking for that, more things will appear. It's very similar to if I said, hey, look for red cars. All of a sudden, you're like, wow, there's a lot of red cars on the road. Like the manufacturers must have like up their game here. And it's in fact, no, of course, they haven't changed the number of red cars. You're just looking for them, so you see more of them.
Yeah. I love that. That also is a mindset, though, and it's the antithesis to the kind of failure mindset that people sometimes get caught in. So I'd love to hear you talk about failure, your concept of a failure loop, and how that can be used to move you in a better direction.
The failure loop framework is a way of reimagining failure as people traditionally think about it. So there's a little graph in my book, but I'll explain it to your listeners. Think of individual loops in a chain that go up and to the right. So the chain goes up and to the right, and then there's individual loops that make it up. In an individual loop, there's a point where it goes back down into the left. So it dips down, right? And that's the failure event. So an external failure event has happened. And that's, I didn't do as well on that presentation. My voice quivered and I started stuttering and I didn't say my message the way I wanted to. Or, okay, that decision I made did not go how I wanted it to. And now everyone sees it and now I'm embarrassed. And I failed at that. And that's the point where it feels really crappy. And it's that gut punch. And it's that just like, oh, no, I failed. And a lot of people stop there. And a lot of people sit down and declare themselves a failure and stop. And if instead you take the learning and you take the lesson out of that event, even if that might be hard or painful to do, and you apply it the next time, you've just propelled yourself up the chain and you've just propelled yourself to the new level and you've made progress. And so having this visual framework or just this mental model in your head about failure can really change your relationship with it. So instead of failure is just all negative and it's just a I have to think badly about myself as a person every time I fail. You can say, no, let me put this in perspective and know where I am in the process. I'm on that bottom part of the individual loop. And what do I need to do now? I need to take the lesson and take the learning and apply it going forward. And if I do that, then I've just grown, I've just improved, and I just made progress. And it's the definition of learning. So it's not easy at times, believe me, I understand, but just the simple awareness of, I know where I am in the process, I know what I need to do. And if you take that failure loop methodology to heart, and you do that over and over again in your career, in your life, you will be a successful person.
Yeah, I love that. And the path to leadership is by definition paved with some failures along the way and some mistakes and some things you need to learn from. How do you help people level up their leadership, and how do you help people move into leadership positions?
I think you're right. I mean, failure in quotes is actually a mark of a successful person, in my
Yeah,
opinion, because that means someone is putting themselves out there. They're trying new things. They're trying to do things they haven't done before. And so as a leader in anything, I mean, you think about, I work in the business world. If you're taking on a VP role and you've never had one, if you're taking on a C-suite role and you've never had one, well, of course you're going to get out there, try something new, and it will not go perfectly to plan.
right.
And you're going to have to adapt quickly and put it in the failure loop model and get yourself up to that next rung. And so I think it's putting all these things together. I love the craft of leadership, and I think leadership evolves over time. So we as people evolve over time. We grow as humans, and our leadership does as well. And so having these frameworks to fall back on or use, pull out of your toolbox, so to speak, and
Right.
apply in the right ways in the right situations, that's what I like to arm my clients with. It's not, here's what you need to specifically do in this situation. Sometimes we talk about that, and I can give my recommendation if they would like, but more so it's, I want to arm you with the tools and frameworks that are going to help you best, and then help you learn how to use them. And so then you can do it on your own, and you can go off and say, hey, I can self-coach, or I can apply these in the right way, or I just feel real confident that I have what I need in any situation, and I can draw on them in the right ways.
I love that. I love that. And what do you see as the biggest barriers for people really moving into leadership? Because I see this true, as well, working with C-suite executives. They get to that place, and then they tend to hit these barriers where they're not quite sure how to move forward. Like, what do you see as the biggest barriers moving forward to leadership, into like full on leadership?
That's a big question. I will share that a lot of times it's internal. So
Mhm.
they
Yep.
they are like, I need to be more prepared to take that next step, and that can come in different forms. So I need more training, I need more education, I need more confidence, I need someone else to tell me that I can do this. And it's like, hey, with the confidence piece, a big one is, you can't wait until you feel confident.
Right.
You have to act, and then the feelings will follow. And so they're sitting there like, I'm waiting to feel confident, I'm waiting to feel like I'm ready for this job. It's like, no, you have it backwards. You have to go out and ask for that job and advocate for yourself, and then you will gain the experience and the competence, which will lead to confidence. And so that's a big one that holds people back. There are times where we talked about mentorship before. You need to be a person of excellence, you need to work hard, you need to be with integrity and do a good job, and then someone sometimes has to open a door for you. And there are those inflection points in careers where, hey, someone sees potential in you and they open a door for you, and you have to go through it, and you have to be ready. So preparation, opportunity, all of those things. Get yourself in position to walk through open doors. Like, get yourself, don't be lazy, don't lay back, don't feel sorry for yourself. Be a person of excellence, work hard, learn, grow, improve. And so when someone or when an opportunity presents itself, you don't timidly go, oh, should I walk through this door? You knock it
Right.
down and you walk through it, and you walk through it with confidence. So I think those are some big ones. On the flip side, I just would like to add, if you are in a position to open a door for someone else, do it,
Yep.
right? Pay it
Nice.
forward. So
Yep.
if you're in a position and you see someone, oh my gosh, Will is a hard worker, he's really smart, he's great with clients, he's great with people, and he just doesn't have an opportunity. Let me get his name out there in our leadership meetings. Let me say, can we make a new role for him? Let me say, hey, so-and-so is moving on. Will would be a great backfill. Can we kind of talk about this and get his name out there? Open the doors for other people.
Yeah, I love that. And it's both. I mean, because we focus so much on interdependence, we encourage people to open those doors. But a lot of my work is preparing people to see the open door. I think that's where I see it especially with a lot of like people coming into senior management. They haven't quite gotten to the C-suite yet, or they aspire to greater leadership. And I tend to work with tech organizations. And as I work with them, there's often been a number of open doors that they just didn't either see or walk through. There's a confidence and a mindset there that's important. I love you talk about, I'd like to hear you talk more about this aptitude and attitudes bucket, because I think that's been a sub theme of what we've been talking about the whole time.
Sure. Aptitude and attitude, that can be used in a recruiting and hiring context. Yep. And it also can be used in evaluating or assessing an existing team. And so when you're looking to bring someone onto your team, I often say the two big buckets you want to think about are aptitude and attitude. Aptitude are the hard skills you need. So, perhaps a developer has to know a certain coding language, or if you're in finance, you got to be a CPA. The attitude bucket is what it says. It's the attitude. It's are you good to work with? Do people look forward to working with you, or do they go, oh, like Emily, like she's really good at her job, she knows her stuff, but I cringe when I have to interact with her. And it's kind of the fit, like the company culture fit, the team culture fit, those types of things. And so you should look for both when you're hiring and recruiting people. So they can have the hard skills, and if they don't have the attitude piece, for me, it's a no hire. And that can be like, ooh, they just don't have a good attitude. They're not a team player. Or it can just be like, hey, nothing wrong with them, nothing wrong with us. It's just not a good fit. So it's just not the right fit. And that's almost as important, if not more so, than the aptitude piece, because who you get to work with and who you're interacting with 8 to 10 hours a day is important. So you can certainly use those buckets and that filter to think about recruiting and hiring. If you're inheriting a team, or you're just kind of wanting to do a proactive check-in with how your team is doing now, you can think about this for your existing team members. So, okay, like I have 8 existing team members. How are they doing in the aptitude and attitude buckets? And do I need to help them and support them and train them to up their game in either category? Do I need to do a little bit more coaching on, hey, this is kind of how we want to approach communicating with internal colleagues, or we might want to go a different direction with how we do those client calls type of thing. So it's a good check-in and lens to look at your existing team as well.
Yeah, I love that. And it can be a good lens even for yourself.
Absolutely.
In terms of aptitude, I know, in terms of interdependence, one of the concepts I work with is an idea called a life team. If we think about our life as our own private corporation, we hire a CFO maybe because we're not the most financially literate, or that's not an area where we have developed skills. And so we hire a CFO. Who's your CFO for your life team? If we think about in the same way, like building an effective team in an organization, we need that for our lives as well. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I just want to say, I mean, I love your podcast. I love your theme. And if more people had the approach of, let me go out and serve, and let me go out and help people, it's the law of the world. It'll come back to you. Again, be a person of excellence, serve others, servant leadership, get up each day and be less me-centric. So what's in it for me? What am I going to do today? How do I look good? How do I get ahead? These types of things. If you switch that lens and just wake up every day and say, how can I be good to someone? How can I help someone out? How can I encourage someone? These things will, one, make people want to be around you. You will
Right.
draw people to you. People will want to follow you as a leader.
Mhm.
And secondly, you're putting these good things in the world. It will come back to you. You know, if you open doors for someone, you don't know if a door will open later on from that same person. So it'll come back to you. But I love, love, love your theme and message. So I just wanted to throw that out there to everyone as well.
Thank you. Thank you. So last question, just a really big picture question. Like, where do you want the world to go? Like if you had a chance to sort of advise the world, where would you hope the world would begin to move?
Oof, that's a large question. I mean, I believe that our purpose is to put good in the world. So if everyone put a little bit of good in the world, it would be a better place, right? And I think that's done through everyone's unique talent and skill set. People are inclined to certain things. You mentioned financial people, and there's musicians and people who are clearly meant to be an athlete. All these things, and so if you find that, your mission and your purpose and your drive, and you are in that space, and you're contributing at your best, and you're fully optimized, and you're fully alive. I think if everyone was in that, or at least a little closer to that, the world would just be a different place to be in. And so I would really encourage folks to find that for themselves and go after it, and then help others find that. And if you think about just your team or your neighborhood, and extrapolate that to the world, if the world was filled with those people who wake up every day and are like, I'm excited about what I get to do. And
Right.
I'm in my element. I lose time doing what I'm doing because I'm so in the flow. The world would be a different place. So I would go after that.
I love that thought, and what a beautiful thought to close on. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your presence. And I really am excited to share your thoughts with my listeners.
Thank you so much, Will.
All right, thanks.